Hello, welcome to Simple SQL. Today we're going to be going over how to create a table. If you don't already have it open, open Management Studio and get connected to your local instance of SQL Server. Also go ahead and open up a new query window. The first thing that we need to do is make sure that we put our table in the correct database. If you'll remember a few episodes back, we created a database and I called mine Simple SQL. There are a couple of different ways to point your query window at that database. The first way is to click up at the top here and select your database. The other way to do it is with a use statement inside your query. So if we type use simple SQL, and remember we've got IntelliSense, so we can just hit tab, that will also change which database we're pointing at. So I'm going to put this back to master, and I'm just going to execute my query here. And you can see that we're now pointing at Simple SQL. Another command that I want to show you is the go command. So what go is it's a batch separator, and what that means is that everything above the go statement is treated as a batch. So it is all executed, and then it proceeds and works with the things below it. The reason that's important is because sometimes you want your code to finish executing before your other code begins. Like in this case, we want to make sure that we are using the correct database before any of our other commands begin. So we'll put use simple SQL in our first line, we'll put our go statement, and this is where we're going to put our create table statement. So create table statement is typed exactly as it said, and that's just create table, and then we have to give it a table name. So in this case, we're going to make a table about countries, and so we'll call our table countries. Now there's a lot of different naming conventions out there that go over how you're supposed to capitalize things, whether or not you use a plural for a table, and a lot of this really does just turn out to be personal preference or the preference of your employers or team or whoever it is that you're working with. So I'm going to call my table countries, the plural, and it is going to hold country information. So after you type the create table statement and you give it a name, you open parentheses, and the white space here doesn't matter. I type this way for readability, but SQL ignores this white space, so you could type it all in one line if you wanted to, but I like to hit return and indent. The first column that I want to give it is country name, and then we have to give that column a data type, and I'm just going to make it varchar 200. And if you remember from the previous episode, that means that my countries can have names from anywhere from 0 to 200 characters. It can be letters, numbers, whatever it happens to be. Most of our countries will probably just have letters. Let's also give it a capital. Let's also make that a varchar. Let's give it a population. And you can see that it highlighted the word population in blue, which means that it's a keyword inside SQL Server. What we can do whenever we've used a keyword for something else, like a column name, is put square brackets around it. And this isn't always necessary, but it's a good practice to use these square brackets anytime you've used a keyword in a way other than what it's intended to be. And what that's telling SQL is that that square bracket is an individual object, and in this case, it knows from the context that we're talking about a column name. So we're going to say population, and a good data type for that is probably int, because that's whole numbers and we don't have fractions of a person. Let's also do life expectancy. And so for this, we're going to make it numeric. And let's see. People don't normally live more than, 100 and some odd years, and we're going to want 2 specific digits. So let's call it 52, and that should always be good for our life expectancies. And let's go ahead and also add date added. And this is going to be the date that we put our country into our table. So we'll have a record of when things became available in the table. And for this, let's make it a date time 2. Okay. Now there are a bunch of other things that can be put onto these columns, but for right now, this is enough to get you started with a very basic table. So let's go ahead and run our query, and you'll see we've got commands completed successfully. Now, you may remember that we've got the tree view over on the left-hand side that tells us about, what objects we have, and you may remember that does not refresh automatically. So we're going to right-click on Simple SQL, and we're going to click on Refresh, and then we're going to look inside it at the tables, and we can now see that we have this table here. And you'll notice that it has a prefix on it, which is DBO. And what that prefix is a schema. So every object you create goes into a schema, and we're going to cover those later. But it's basically an organizational bucket within the database, and we mostly use it for security permissions. DBO is the default schema, and it stands for database owner. So everything that we make is going to have this DBO prefix on it. We can also expand the table and see that we've got columns inside here. And if we look at the columns, we can see the columns that we defined in our create table command all exist in here now. We've got our country name, which is a varchar, our capital, which is a varchar, our population, life expectancy, date added. You'll notice that there are a number of other subfolders inside here, keys, constraints, triggers, and we'll get to those in time. But the simple creation of a table is all we wanted to learn today. And in the next episode, I'm going to show you how you can insert data into the table and how you can update values that are already there, and how you can delete those values out. Thanks for joining me, and I'll talk to you later.